Welcome back to the DTF Film Sessions. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean, and I'm here with Nick Merriam, our director of draft content and scouting. And today we are back to the defensive line. Episode 13 is going to be Tyree Wilson, the defensive end out of Texas Tech. So Wilson's a big guy. He's 6'6", 271 in terms of measurables, and he's every bit of that on tape. So he holds up very well in the run game. He's he likes his power moves in the pass rush game. But what can you tell us today, Nick, about Tyree Wilson before we jump into the tape?
Well, he's also got 36-inch arms, which is just absurd. Yeah, I mean, this is your hulking edge rusher that you just kind of see getting drafted higher these days. It's why Travon Walker went as high as he did last year, and I think the excuse for him was he was being played out of position. Tyree Wilson was not being played out of position. Texas Tech moved him around, used him pretty well. For him, it's just that the athletic tools, although he's not maybe the most polished edge defender yet, they pop on tape. Like, you see it. It totally translates to a lot of the things he does. They definitely pop up on the clips we're going to be looking at, which it's going to be a lot of just kind of flashes of how freakish this guy is, and not necessarily how ready he is to play football immediately, but he's also the type of athlete that steps in and probably creates some big plays in the NFL, even if he doesn't know what he's doing immediately because of how peak this type of specimen he is. And I even think with Travon Walker being as good of an athlete as he was, it didn't always show up on tape as consistently. Whereas this guy, like, I think is more concisely created as an athlete. Like, he's ready as an athlete right now. It's like, so we talked about Michael Mayer maybe on one of the podcasts a couple weeks ago, and I talked about how Mayer is a good athlete, but he hasn't grown into it yet, and he stumbles sometimes, and he's not fluid yet. Tyree Wilson as just moving, jumping, running, cutting, all of that is extremely smooth, and he looks comfortable doing it. He's clearly worked on footwork and things like that. It's just kind of putting it all together into the edge rusher position specifically that he needs to work on.
Yeah, so I mean, he's not super explosive off the ball just because he's so big, but he does have a nice top speed. So once you see him chasing plays from behind, he gets up to speed pretty quickly. And so, you can't really leave him as the unblocked backside defender because he'll get there faster than you think. And with his length, he'll get there in terms of, layout tackle. I watched the game against, what team did I watch him against? Didn't watch him against Baylor. I didn't watch him against
TCU. Oklahoma
I watched him
State.
against TCU, and they love to double team him. Yeah,
that was one of his best games this year. And we talked about with Kyron too earlier. Kyron's not as high on Wilson, and I think it kind of convinced him a little bit to move him a tiny bit on his board. The main thing with him is, yes, he's not going up against great competition in the Big 12, but the Big 12 loves to set up these offensive systems where they spread you out and they just get the ball distributed quickly and they let their playmakers make plays. It's not a pass rusher's conference. It's hard to affect the game as a pass rusher. So the fact that he does even have some plays on tape that are fascinating, affecting the pocket quickly, it's difficult to do that because, again, he's not a speed first guy, so he's not just crashing the pocket immediately all the time. And also the ball is often just out quick enough that he's not able to really do anything.
Right. And, they double teamed him a lot in the run game. He holds up really well against that. Definitely has a good anchor. He likes to use the long arm. And you see some plan in terms of, him using the long arm, turning the corner, and then just when you expect him to do that, then he'll hit you with the bull rush right up the middle. So you can see that. I don't think he has, an in-play plan per se. So if he's hit with a counter from the offensive lineman, he doesn't necessarily have a follow-up to that. So you can see some development there. But you can see the cogs turning. You can see how he can develop into a high-quality edge defender in the NFL, especially with how good he already is against the run. So anything else before we jump into the tape here?
No, let's hop in.
All right, let's do it.
So first clip, straight speed to power. Not a whole lot of speed, but I think its initial burst is decent enough that he can really get under your pad level and drive defense or offensive lineman backwards. He does it often. We talked about the fit with Atlanta and how him opposite of Arnold Ebiketie would be great just because you kind of have that speed element opposite of a pocket pusher, and that's exactly what Tyree Wilson is, right? Despite his height, his width, his length and ability to get under the pad level just with like his arms like alone allows him to kind of play a little more upright than you'd even like think. Like he doesn't look like he's playing with super great pad level at all times, but because of the length of his arms, he can kind of gain that under your pad level leverage and drive you backwards from relatively higher leverage and just kind of, scan what's going on in the backfield at the same time as driving you backwards. So again, here it's just kind of getting a good push off the ball and just mauling his way to the quarterback, right? And you're going to see this from him. This is his go-to. Working off of this is going to be a part of his plan going to the NFL. You got to find ways to kind of set up counter moves so he can lead with this pass rush move. But there are going to be offensive linemen in the NFL that when he gets isolated one-on-one are going to be very much struggling with this specifically.
Right. I mean, so with his length coming in from this pad level, it's going to be hard to win against that. And then I'm not sure who this offensive lineman is, but he's just, he doesn't really have a chance on this play.
Mm-hmm.
He just pushed straight back to the quarterback. And then you see the length where he can just reach out and snag that quarterback. And even though it wasn't a sack, definitely impacted the play and very well could be a sack. The ball's out slightly less quickly. All right, maybe this one will actually play. There we go.
This is my favorite play that we've done all year. This is by far my favorite. So he's playing outside linebacker. He's going to redirect a route, and then he's going to chase down, not make a full tackle, but kind of get there and like help in the tackling process. And this is just kind of like free range running, like just watch him move and be an athlete here, and just to get an idea of like what type of athlete we're dealing with. It's very fluid. The ability to kind of like come from getting his hands on one receiver to reverse course and kind of track down this other route runner on the backside here. As a defensive end, like this is a 270-pound guy is, I use the word freakish multiple times in this video already, but it's frightening, right? Like this is different and it stands out when you see these things. And that's why this guy's getting drafted as highly as he will be.
Right. So I remember this play from this game, and this is the kind of play where you need to realize that even though he's put in a position where it doesn't suit his skill set at all, and you would never want to do this in the NFL because, like, at this point, there's literally just he's useless on this play from here on out until you see the traits pop, and then he's able to just run down the field and tackle this player, in space. And yeah, he didn't do it all by himself, but this shows you the kind of top speed that he has. And I don't even think he's I don't think he's going all out. I think he's just kind of, he's just kind of chugging because he doesn't want to put himself out of position. But it's a ridiculously athletic play, even though in the reality in this play, it didn't necessarily make a big impact.
And this is what I mean in terms of like it translating to him being an athlete, not necessarily football. Yeah, he obviously knows what he's doing. Like he's trying to take an angle here where if it breaks all those tackles, he can make the tackle downfield. He's like a safety valve tackler in this case. But kind of the understanding of anticipation of where the ball is going to be, where he needs to be to help on the play, and just getting there without hesitating is instinctive to him. And, that is easier to coach up than somebody who is still processing every play and trying to kind of figure out what exactly they should be doing. He at least is making decisions on the field for sure.
What do we have here? You can preface it while I set it up.
So play number 3 is just going to kind of highlight our closing speed and his length. We talked about how the importance of interior defensive linemen at the top of the draft is their ability to kind of close on the quarterback and make tackles, because you often see guys with the power maybe to beat linemen if they're big enough, but it's really difficult for them to kind of get downhill and then tackle a more nimble athlete. And again, this is a bigger edge player who can probably reduce down to 3 tech at certain looks. And he has had no problem with these type of plays where he needs to finish a play on a quarterback. He is in, he has the length. He's kind of he's such a wide, legs to just like a big, spider body type where he can just get wide at any point, that if you can get within like a couple yards of you and you're able to shake him, he's still going to have this kind of fallback option of just, I'm so long, I can grab you. And we see that often against TCU and Baylor in these clips where he is like chasing down somebody, maybe isn't, breaking down for the tackle fully, but he can just lay out and he's long enough that he'll make the tackle.
So I'm curious whose fault this is here, because I mean,
I would
guess the
suspect it's the
tackle is
running
supposed,
back.
yeah,
But
the tackle's probably supposed to take the outside defender, but it is such a hilarious mismatch that if for the running back to
yeah,
take on Tyree Wilson
he'd blown up.
coming up the B gap here, that it's like almost just better that he didn't, you know what I mean? Would he hear more about the mistake or more about getting put flat on his butt in the film room afterwards? But then you see here,
Probably the mistake, but he doesn't have to do much here to win. The point is, there are going to be quarterbacks that are very difficult in this situation specifically to tackle. I don't know that Max Duggan is one of them, but he is fully extended to make this play.
Mm-hmm. He's also completely changing direction. He's turning a corner here, coming from, I don't know, again, maybe not full speed, but like that is a pretty open stride length there. Like he's trying to get there.
Yeah.
Duggan sees it, moves, and then Wilson here is able to just plant his foot and completely change his trajectory in about 2 steps and simultaneously lay out and make that shoestring grab and again force the incompletion here.
Yeah,
so this is a very impressive play.
That really I remember having to work on after tearing up my knee is you have to learn to kind of chop up your feet a little bit and slow down your stride when you're trying to change direction again. Because you're just don't have the trust to change long striding at that consistently. And he is bounding and still able to get 90 degrees, which is just at that size. Goodness.
The way that he has his left foot where he's running outright and then that's pretty crazy. And that's some of the bend that we talk about.
There's no thought here.
For edge rushers.
He can just lean where he wants to go and his body goes there.
And this is the kind of a bend that we talk about when beating tackles around the corner, which we don't even see with him that much. But this just shows you that he has the ability to do that. And it's just going to need to be coached out of him.
For sure. That's a good point.
All
right. So let's highlight the acrobatic tackling a little bit more because it's again, like I said, littered in his tape. He knows he's long. He knows he can, probably jump 12 feet. And so you see these plays on tape where his body control and ability to kind of reach from literally hash to hash is just incomparable in this draft and probably previous drafts as well. It is a split second from him to get from the B gap to outside the slot corner to make this tackle. And some of it he runs for, but a lot of it is quite literally just him laying out and having that, ability to grab you up in midair acrobatically, using his size to kind of swing you to the ground. He does this a lot. And every time I'm wowed by it. I've not gotten tired of watching this. I think, you could have discussions about it's not the best form tackle and there'll be bigger players. The NFL level will probably bounce off of it. You're right. But what this does allow you to do is when you need to make a tackle like this and you're not expected to make a tackle, you're going to bring down more players than the average, NFLer can.
There's no reason that any defensive end should be able to make a tackle in this situation on this player. He's in Heisman look already because he knows he's coming, which is hilarious. But he's already cut outside, and there's no one there. And from here, he's just gonna lay out from what that's got to be almost 3 yards away. It's ridiculous.
It might be more, honestly. Well, he doesn't quite lay out yet, but yes, it is. Yeah. He has this reckless abandon too, which normally we talk about corners having you kind of have to sell it to make taking hits. And when you're a smaller dude, he does it at that size. He's fearless. And it's, I don't know. I don't exactly know, what caused him in his career to think he needs to put 100% into these tackles, but he sometimes you just see it with guys like James Harrison, Troy Polamalu, Ray Lewis, and he's got that where it's just he is trying to kill everybody he hits.
Right, and it's funny. I mean, that makes an impact, right? I think it's not every defensive end that the running back is already throwing the stiff arm out, 2-3 yards away when it's a defensive end coming. Most of those guys are just foot in the ground and going and just assuming that guy's not getting there. So that it's making an impact. And also, unlike a guy like Brian Brzee, who we talked about in our last film session, when he gets his arms on you, he's so powerful that more often than not, that is going to be enough to bring you down, right? Mm-hmm. Like we see Brzee certainly has the tools, but just because he gets arms on you doesn't necessarily mean that you're going down. He needs to finish. Wilson does a good job of finishing for the most part here.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the next play.
So I do have a little bit more of a worry with his run game impact, and not because I don't think he can set the edge or stand his ground, but more because I just think he's not played as much. I think they pass rush him more than they use him on running downs, and he's just maybe he just needs to do a little bit more of it, get used to setting, gaps, setting space. But I do think he's a very good edge setter when he's on the move. It's more of a problem when he's flat footed and he's trying to figure out what exactly his gap responsibilities are. But when he gets, these stretch plays, jet sweeps, outside zones, and he just has to set an edge, he's awesome. I mean, he will ride a tackle into the backfield on the move and cut off any ability to get to the outside. He did this a bunch of times against TCU. He does it against Baylor a couple of times. I think he did it a couple of times against Oklahoma State. But it's just hard to slow this guy when he's moving, especially when you've got him on the side here. It's strange. With these bigger guys in the NFL, you kind of want to get them moving because they don't love to run as much. I get the idea that Tyree Wilson loves to run, and it's almost like you kind of want to run at him or up the middle because he's less likely to be an impact there than he is to be on the perimeter.
Well, again, athletically speaking, it's going to be, so you see where he is. He's right here. It's going to be very unusual for a player to have the length to engage the defensive tackle, or the offensive tackle, the guard actually, but the offensive lineman regardless, like this, and be able to keep his hips running in the right direction to defend this play. Usually to anchor, you're going to have to kind of shimmy as opposed to run with your body twisted like that. And so his ability to do that means he's in a good position to make the tackle on this running back here.
Mm-hmm. No, he doesn't have to rip across. He can just keep kind of running horizontally. Yeah.
And then again, long arms. You really have to change your trajectory as a running back to avoid that. And it's man, he doesn't get much on him. That's maybe a bigger running back might be able to run through that, but that's just a lot of strength.
He does a good job using his body weight in the tackle too. Yeah. Kind of that twist formula of tackling that we talked about in other videos. Mm-hmm. And I also think he's not as good at block shedding as you'd like for a guy with his length, which is why on the move, I think he does a better job getting off these blocks just because it's, he's a much more fluid mover than almost all the offensive linemen he's going to be going up against. All right, last clip. This is just where he needs to go with his game a little bit. This is just a hesitation, jump in the A-gap, cross-facing pass rush move. This is the type of counter move we need to see a little bit more of, kind of put your tackle off balance that sometimes sets up the power. But here he just kind of crosses his face and just, jumps through the gap like you would as a field goal, blocker on defense, right? He's getting into that gap, making it a pain for someone to, block him because they've got his one shoulder. And when you don't get both your hands on the center of Tyree Wilson, it's going to be really hard to slow him down just because of how big he is and the forward movement he created, the force he creates moving, right? Not a position you want to get in as a tackle. You almost have to kind of always play inside to out and hope that he can't beat you with speed rushes because although he can kind of do that and doesn't have the bend quite figured out, if you let him get inside of you like this, he's just going to be very difficult to slow him down.
So I made a note of this play when I was watching this game as well, because while he doesn't necessarily have tremendous change of direction, he does have some really nice wiggle here. So you'll see him throw the inside step here, outside step here. And this is where he's setting you up outside a lot because he loves to go outside, hit you with that left arm, and then just use the power to run you around the corner. So you're kind of mentally prepared for that. And he'll either hit you right up the middle or go inside. But this, for a 6'6", 270-pound dude, this right here is not natural. This final move, right? Inside, outside, then back to this inside with that level of fluidity hitting that
And
gap,
it's
and then the
very
power
quick.
to run through two guys.
There's no hip flip. It's just boom, 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 go. And that's
watching it full speed.
Yeah.
You barely even see the first move. It's so subtle.
We talk about footwork with offensive tackles and how like you kind of want to hear like a pitter patter like when you're like thinking about it with their feet and like how it's like very choppy and quick because they don't want to get moved off the ground too easily. It's almost like him on this move is he is like mirroring that because he's not really off the ground a whole lot. It's very quick, and maybe there's a decision pre-snap to throw this move out. But you have to have a commitment and a confidence in this move that it's going to work, because if you hesitate, you're going to get blown up, right? And he fully goes for it.
And I also, again, I just love his ability to, even after that, he's getting hit from the left with the tackle, right from the guard. Like that guard knows that like this is a guy I need to watch out for, and he just runs right through that, no problem. And again, even though the ball's out, hit the quarterback, make your presence felt. Yeah, I mean, I understand why people like him so much. And he's a good effort player. So, he doesn't have this unrelenting motor that we see from guys like Nolan Smith or, from Will Anderson, where he's just like 100 miles an hour every second of every play. But he does have good effort. He doesn't give up on plays. And he's a plus player against the run already. He's a good player, again, in pass rushing situations, and there's so much there that you could see how this is a player who can be an impact in both phases, run and pass, in his first year in the NFL, right? And that's why you take him in the top 10.
For sure. And I'm excited for him. I think he is an impact player day one. I do think, Kyron would hate me saying this, but I think his ceiling is higher than Will Anderson's. I think that this is like, his physical peak is about as high as we've seen from any player. And I think his trajectory is already in a much better spot than Travon Walker's is, which is, interesting considering like how I would compare this draft to that draft. I don't think this draft is great, but I think Tyree Wilson was a better prospect than Travon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson were coming out. So there are options here at the top of the draft that are really interesting. I have Wilson as my edge too, still behind Anderson. But I wouldn't be shocked, especially with like Carter's off-field concerns, if you see Wilson get picked ahead of him for sure. And they're the team that the Cardinals, I have heard, and I think we've all heard, are going to be thinking about him versus Anderson. I don't think they'll ultimately take him over Anderson, but that'll be a discussion for at the very least.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the one thing that I will say is that we've selected a number of plays that highlight what he's good at, right?
Yes.
We haven't necessarily dwelled on anything that he has as a weakness. And I think, we've selected plays where he's made an impact in the pass rush, and there are certainly a fair amount where he's just, he's throwing that left arm out, he's getting run around the corner, and
but I think a lot of the things he's not good at are kind of because of his reliance on athleticism. It's like he plays upright, but it doesn't matter because his length is good. He plays off balance because he's playing 100 miles per hour and just trying to like cut and run and make guys miss. And sometimes he messes up and he gets knocked to the ground. But again, all this is projectable stuff. And if, he ultimately learns to play the position better, these are things that are not going to pop up. Mike Tomlin talks about like, what is he going to be when you coach him up? And I think a lot of guys, like the projection for them is better because they have these traits. But it's more like, yeah, there are some things that you can't fix that easily that are like really difficult. I think in his case, it is truly like, it's not that hard to get this guy to where you want him to be. I think he's very close. And I think, even so, as an edge defender, how many plays in a game do you like really impact, right? Like a good amount, but not a whole.
If you can play against the run, then a lot. But
yeah, I mean, well, he is. But and again, like even with that, like if you're setting your edge, running back might cut away from you and maybe create something on their own. Or if the O-line's doing well somewhere else, you don't necessarily impact that every play either. If you can make impact plays like he's doing, he's making above replacement level plays consistently when he does make plays. That stands out.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's going to do it for Tyree Wilson. I'm Maxine. You can find me on Twitter at TheMaxine. Find Nick at Nick with Sports. Remember, you can find Defiant Takes Football at Defiant Takes on all social media outlets. You can find us live every Monday and Thursday on the YouTube channel, which will also be released as podcast episodes in the feed. You can find all written content published over at defianttakesfootball.com. And you can also find Kyron and I doing offensive line breakdowns called brick wall breakdowns on the YouTube channel as well. I think that covers everything. So we will be back here very shortly to do another edge defender, namely Myles Murphy from Clemson. So if you're looking for an edge defender in this draft, then you can shimmy right on over to Myles Murphy and see what you think. All right. See you soon.